Greetings, Earthlings, in Mr. Thompson's 20-2 social class. How are all of you humans doing out there? It's nice to see you guys. Hopefully you did okay last week on the unit test. So I threw a few curveballs in you in that test so you guys see what it was all about. So I'm going to basically just a recording of chapter 5. Okay, so the next little unit that we're going to be looking at in social studies really revolves around World War One, which is really interesting and gives you, if you're actually interested in learning about this stuff, there's a ton of stuff between YouTube and the internet that you can access to go way beyond this course. I know when I was in high school, I didn't really particularly like history all that much. I was more into social arguing, that type of things. But World War One was always interesting to me. Canada played like kind of a big role. Some really kind of epic battles took place with Canadians involved that did change the outcome of World War One. So let's just get into this lesson nice and quickly. So your instructions for today are just going to be to sit back and listen to the slideshow, check it out as I kind of run through it. Won't be a ton of videos for you to watch, some things for you to watch, and just an assignment that will accompany it. Very similar to what we've been doing with the different historical times that we've needed. So kind of like the French Revolution, the Troubles. I'll create you guys a slideshow for you to go and plug and play some information, and we'll crush that for next week. Now, I don't know the deal yet. I'm assuming that we still get an Easter break, so you won't hear from me after that, but I will give you something to keep you busy for this week. I hope you guys are all doing good, first and foremost. Our crazy class, it's a little wild, but I do kind of, it's weird to think about, but like miss hanging with the 20-2s. We had our Couch Boys, and we had our Darth Cadiuses, and we had our, all kinds of different folk piled into that room. So it's too bad that we just can't do our thing and just put along and learn this stuff in person, but this is what it is, okay? So I'll try and keep this brief. I've said that a few times, it doesn't usually happen, but let's check it out, okay? So national interest in World War One. So national interest being kind of our main terminology for this chapter, okay? So what is best for your nation or your nation state? Remember the difference between that. A nation can be a group of people, whereas a nation state is almost like a geographical border, an organized system of government that like kind of accompanies that. So what's best for you? Okay, so it changes over time and in response to various circumstances, political views of those in power. Okay, so what Obama wanted for his country and what Donald Trump wants for his country are a little bit different. Same could be said about Trudeau versus Harper. Different political powers will obviously affect what your main national interest is. Okay, so whether that's having a really strong climate policy and being very liberal and open government, or being very dedicated to oil individualism. Okay, so again, your politics would change what your national interests are. You take a kind of look down there. You can see it's an example of how it can turn kind of nasty, right? We live in a world where inevitably it's always a competition. And so sometimes your national interest, what is important to your entire country, you do some things in order to get access to those other things, okay? So a little bit about 1914. Okay? So we had World War One coming along. We had major empires crumbling. So different powers kind of around the world. You can see our key here. So neutral powers, central powers, allied powers, kind of Europe at the time. Some of these big empires started to crumble. Okay, so again, we a little bit about imperialism and a little bit about colonialism. This idea that countries like Great Britain and Europe and other places in Europe went out and colonized the world. Well, all these massive structures, these empiric structures, started to fall apart. Okay, so we started to see individual countries start to care about themselves a little bit more, and so we had things like arms races. So arms races are when you have a bunch of weapons being developed and constructed and stockpiled for potentially future conflict or a military intervention. Okay, and then what we also seen with that were alliances. So some of these countries started to come together and work together to get this stuff done. Okay, so oftentimes your national interests can equal international conflict. So again, if I want something, so if Canada and the United States both want something, okay, so actually an example of that today. Canada 3M Masks America You can see this is kind of crazy. So the company 3M makes these face masks, these protective face masks, okay? And today, Trump officials told them and ordered them to stop sending it to places outside of their country, right? We're in a national pandemic. America does have a need for these, but Canada, it's a transnational corporation. Canada is also part of that, okay? And so if you were interested in actually reading it, you could. But 3M says Trump officials were told to stop sending face masks to Canada if you want to go check it out. But here's an example of your national interest trumping what you're doing for someone else. So yes, Canada, we do rely on those face masks. We have contracts with those companies that send them to us. Well, Trump is saying, listen, my country is in trouble right now, so screw you guys. And so right there, that's a really good example of national interest. Now, that'll probably cause some conflict. I know a lot of Canadians on Twitter, the news, they're going crazy about it because, again, we are in that same pandemic. It's better that we share resources rather than kind of act like an isolationist country and just say, no, we're just going to do our own thing, right? So that conflict will come. Down here, this is the image that I have on the screen right here. It's called Europe's powder keg. We'll learn a little bit more about that, or the Balkans. So a bunch of power that was down here, and all these different national interests eventually led to kind of this situation exploding, which led us to a world war. Okay, so there's four main reasons that we're going to focus on for war. Okay, first is imperialism. So think of this image up here with England. Again, all the colonies, them going around, taking over other countries, basically taking the natural resources, paying back to the mother country, okay, so that large country taking over all those countries and then getting the resources from them. So these other superpowers started to race for colonies. So again, we wanted all the resources. They wanted to make sure their hands were in all the cookie jars. Okay, it caused competition. This competition, it equals tension, right? Think about if you're competing with someone, you're playing video games against someone, you two going at it. Eventually, you get a little chippy, right? You kind of back and forth. One of the prime examples was France versus Germany over Morocco. Okay, major conflict there in Germany. So here's the definition of imperialism: a policy of extending a country's power and influence through diplomacy or military force. Okay, so rule by an emperor. So think of Canada as an example of that. Right? That's why I have that example down there in the corner. Canada being an example as we were a British colony, which means that the First Nations people were here. Britain came. They came and they basically implemented their way of life, their politics, their finances, all of their economic systems, and our history played out as it did. Okay, so imperialism, one of the major reasons for that. Second one is a terminology we call militarism. Okay, so imperialism, militarism, the next two would be a good idea for you guys to put into a term definition, or at least have a good idea of what that means. Okay, so the idea of militarism is you're building up a strong military capacity. Okay, so example of that, in 1914, you had an arms race between Germany and England, again, trying to kind of compete each other to have the most weapons because everyone felt things were going to get a little sketchy. Okay, so the belief or desire of a government or people that a country should maintain a strong military capability and be prepared to use it aggressively to defend or promote national interests. Okay, so we have a crazy example of that in our world right now. You can look at these two graphics I have up here. The United States of America spends a ton of money on their military, right? And there's conflict around the world as it happens, but the military budget for the states, you can see this graphic right here. These are the 7 highest spenders in the world outside of the United States. They spend more money than anyone else in the world, okay? And the 7 second to the United States, all of their money combined does not equal to what the United States military spends on their military, okay? And so what the government is deemed as an appropriate budget. $748 billion US dollars, and that's the first rank globally. All right, so that's a prime example of militarism that's gone a little crazy. Okay, if you wanted to go deeper than that, there's something called the military-industrial complex. That if you're looking for some good documentaries, some YouTube videos to watch, you can read about that. How much money goes in to that budget? Right, you can see right there the money spent on weapons, on bullets, on guns, on ammo, on tanks, on drones, like all this stuff is insane. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry in the States if you want to go further and research it. Okay. Third one is nationalism. We learned about Latin nationalism in our first unit, right? So people become patriots loyal to their countries over their monarchs or rulers. So we kind of got over the Queen. Now, if I were to fight for someone, I'd probably fight for Canada, right? I wouldn't be, I'm going to war for Great Britain. Like, and this is what happened in World War I. We were forced to go and fight. No one's beef in Canada, right? Up here in the north, you're chilling. But because we were a British colony, we were summoned. We had to go. And that's why we had conscription. We had a draft that sent soldiers there, right? Because all of that took place because we were a colony, a British colony, okay? Willing to fight for their country if security is threatened. So you can look down there, and we're going to talk about a little bit this next week, or whenever we get to our next video, we're going to go a little bit deeper into World War II, but, next unit. But this was the start of the issues in Germany that eventually led to them electing Hitler. Remember that. Hitler didn't force power, right? He was an elected official, right? They voted him in. All of this stuff, these national issues, you're going to see Germany was very, very deeply affected by World War I, and it really kind of led to what took place there with their Jewish population, with the German population, the brainwashing and a nationalist pride that ultimately scapegoated the issues that were caused by the government, for the most part, on immigrants and minorities, and in specific Jews that, if you know a little bit about the rest of what happened there, it gets a little crazy. Okay, so we'll go there in our next chapter, in World War II. The fourth thing here in kind of what led to World War I is they started to form alliances. Okay, so an alliance and a relationship among people, groups, or states that have joined together. So there's two examples of that, something we call the Triple Alliance and something called the Triple Entente. Okay, so the Triple Alliance was Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. This is something very important for you guys to know going forward. Okay, and the Triple Entente was France, Britain, and Russia. Okay, so those alliances, we started to come together. Now we have even more military power. I feel more comfortable in going and attacking my fellow guys. Okay. So nations within the empires want independence. Ideas of the Enlightenment and 18th, 19th century revolution spreading. Okay, so think of the French Revolution. That was them breaking away from the monarchs, the kings and queens. All these other nations, they wanted a piece of that. And history was starting to spread around. People see what was going on. Austria-Hungary, many different ethnicities. Okay, it was very difficult to control. Wanting to expand the territory. Okay, they annexed Bosnia. This is some history stuff. Okay, Serbia, allied with Russia, wants to expand their control of the Balkan Peninsula. Keep going. So the spark, what really caused this to set off, and this is like a Sparks Notes, very, very brief understanding of what this is. You can go look this right now. Look at this video right now. Franz Ferdinand. Okay, also a band. That's actually half decent if you like listening to them. But watch this video, because this guy ultimately caused World War I. Okay, so the Austro-Hungarian Archduke, like a prince, Ferdinand, comes to Bosnia to assert their power over the region. He was warned not to. The Serbian terrorist groups that were kind of controlled by the government, they killed this dude, and ultimately this dude's death led to the major pop-off of the Balkans, of this massive region where, they just started to kill each other. And that's how we had ultimately the beginning of World War I. So after that took place, a few dominoes set forth. So watch this. So Austria-Hungary demands to come in to run the investigation. Serbia refuses. Austria-Hungary gives an ultimatum, which is ignored, and also declares war. Okay, doesn't do anything. Russia mobilizes their troops to defend Serbia. Germany declares war on Russia to support their alliance with Austria-Hungary. France declares war on Germany to support their alliance with Russia and get revenge for Franco-Prussian War. So again, you can see all these alliances, all these issues, all these beefs, it all came together as a perfect melting pot, and boom, we now had basically a war between the two different allies there, and all these other countries started to get kind of dragged into the fold. So something called the Schleswig Plan, so the a two-front war, to go after France quickly, surprise them by going through Belgium, and then you can turn around and hit the slow-moving Russians. Britain has an alliance with France and Russia, and has an old treaty with Belgium to protect them. Okay, so take a look at the Eiffel Tower, Germany. So this is actually kind of crazy. The Eiffel Tower, they put a German flag up. They went after France first, right? They actually hung the German flag on top of the Eiffel Tower. A little bit of history for you. I learned when I was in Europe. Someone told me about it. It's kind of cool. Okay, so World War. Okay, so while the fighting all occurred in Europe, those European countries had colonies who also came and got involved in the fight. So if you remember back to this image right here, so the fact that England had their hands on all these different countries now didn't just leave it in the hands of England. All these different colonies, which had soldiers, which had troops, and which had people that were able to fight, now joined in on the party. Okay, and so Canada got involved, right? Why is Canada so directly involved in World War I? Well, this is why. Okay, 1867, the British North America Agreement Act gave us sovereignty over domestic affairs, but not foreign. So that means that we were allowed to control what was going on in Canada, but outside of Canada, if our colony or our empire or our mother country, which was England at the time, Great Britain, if they got into a beef, we had no choice but to participate. Okay, and if you see right here, we celebrated it. Okay, it'll be over by Christmas. So again, taking Canadians and sending them now overseas to Europe to fight in World War I because we were a British colony. It's kind of crazy. Okay, so who's to blame? I'm going to go quickly through this. So Germany, they annexed Alsace-Lorraine in 1871, had aggressive foreign policy of expansion and military buildup, competed in a naval race with Britain, and encouraged Austria's conflict with Serbia. Their hope was the supremacy of Germany. That did not happen. Austria-Hungary, they employed aggressive foreign policy in the Balkans. They used pretext of assassination to attack and to attempt to annex Serbia, right, which was a Russian ally, not smart. They wanted to destroy Serbia and strengthen the empire. Didn't happen. Serbia, they encouraged resistance to Austro-Hungary Empire, served as a base for terrorist organization. Their hope was to bring together the Central Slavic people. Did not happen. Russia encouraged Serb goal of acquiring Bosnia-Herzegovina. Okay, aggressively supported the Serbia and Balkan wars, created tension between Triple Alliance Entente, and they mobilized troops. Their hope was being the champion of Pan-Slavism, a father figure, and a way of living. Did not happen. And Britain competed in an arm race with Germany, kept treaty with Belgium a secret from Germany. British supremacy, nationalism, did it happen? It kind of happened, right? We kind of won the war. There's a lot of fallout that came, and another world war that came after it. But ultimately, I suppose you could say they had some form of British supremacy for quite some time. France, they sought war of revenge against Germany. Okay, they clashed with Germany and Italy in foreign policy, and they encouraged Russian mobilization. They wanted to return loss to the Franco-Prussian War. So again, all of that for naught. Okay, so guys, that kind of brings me to the end here of what caused World War I. Okay, and so this video right here, it's a crash course. Pretty cool video. A lot of information this guy fires at you, but this kind of follows that exact timeline as I did. So you can take a second and watch that. So mixed with what you're going to learn in that video right now, as well as what I just discussed in the slideshow today, that's what your project's going to be on for you guys to crush over the next couple days. Okay, so watch for that. If you're interested, this is a documentary we're going to try and watch next week. I'm going to put 2 links for some files I have for you to download to try and fire up these documentaries. I have digital versions of them. So we're going to try and dangle something for next week. But if you're interested in watching a trailer, same guy who made Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson, he put together this documentary last year, 2018, 2 years ago. They Shall Not Grow Old. And what he was able to do, he was able to edit together clips and like redo footage so that all these people from World War I could tell you about their experience right from the front line. Very cool documentary. We'll check it out. We're also going to be watching 1917. So both of those will act as really good movies for you guys to check out if you got some spare time. Some of the content's a little heavy, okay, but it is world history, right? So particularly in 1917, you'll see some deaths, you'll see some, you see some war-based violence. But those were the realities of what were happening right now, right? And if you're 18 years old, you might have been right there involved because the Empire called you over to see what's up. Okay? So Google Classroom assignment. So when you press the sentence project, I'm not going to read the meme. Okay? Go check it out. Like I said, very similar to what we've been doing. Otherwise, guys, peace and love. Nice chatting, talking, explaining things to you. Yeah, that's it. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.